Sup guys? I'm going to be responding to the questions on the Q&A community post that I made. After the Q&A, I'll also respond to the feedback I got on my guides. So, looking at the results of the poll, the overwhelming winner turned out to be the guides and breakdown videos. I'm glad to hear that many people are enjoying this content because guides especially take the most amount of effort to make. And even still, I'm always unsatisfied with the final product. I try my best to get to the bottom of each concept so that everyone can make their own judgments, and I hope that these guides can stand the test of time. Honestly, it's pretty bad from an analytics standpoint. There are more players who just want a 60-second short on what the best equipment is on the new UR ship. But I feel like you can get that information anywhere else other than on my channel, and I want to remain a little bit different. Also, it feels like the questions I've been getting in the comments have been gradually getting more sophisticated, which is a good sign. Of course, there are still occasionally some dumb comments here and there, but those viewers are quickly filtered out by the video lengths. The least popular category turned out to be meme content. Well, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but once the original, helpful content ideas dry up, the memes are gonna start to flow. Oh yeah. Something that was quite surprising at first, but makes sense when I thought about it, was how few votes the tier lists got, despite the amount of views they get. I did originally start the tier lists because it's a very easy to digest format that nobody on YouTube was doing, so many viewers of the tier list likely aren't regular viewers of the channel, which is totally fine. They do miss a lot of ongoing memes from the channel though, like why I never tier Perseus and so on. That's another thing I noticed, which is that I could probably farm videos on the same topic over and over again, because many people only watch one video here and there when it pops up on their algorithms. But many of my videos are tailored toward regular viewers of the channel. Okay, that is enough yapping, let's get into the questions. First, we have a question from Himmel Silver, who is one of the fastest users to click on my videos when they're uploaded. And they ask, how do you feel when you spread misinformation on the internet on Azur Lane? As a casual player, what are your thoughts on the current state of the game? I'm not enough of a masochist to do something I don't like for such a long time, so I'd say I feel pretty great about it. And as a casual player, my feelings toward the game has always been the same. The fact that you can collect every ship in the game for free is amazing. And the occasional god tier skin keeps me coming back. There are things that could be improved, and I have some ideas that I would like to convey to the developers that I think would make the game better. As a casual player, of course. But I don't think I have enough of a reach yet to influence anything. Next, MikuZ210 asks how I time my airstrikes. I will have a video on this topic coming soon. The way I do it is not very complicated and doesn't require any calculations, so be on the lookout for when that comes out. Next, Frost Chaos asks, how do you keep the game fresh and interesting between long event breaks, or when the released ships or equipment is meh at best? I just do other stuff. For the past few months, I got really into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate after playing it at my friend's house a few times. I've actually never played any Smash Bros. Until this year, so there was quite a lot of stuff to learn. And apart from that, I have classes, working out, and cooking that I spend a lot of time doing and researching, among other games and watching anime. Life has much more to offer than just Azur Lane, and keeping up with the dailies while doing other stuff is not too monumental of a task for me. Next, LandZ First asks why I prefer the New Year Georgia skin over her dress skin. I feel like the dress skin is a bit too masculine and doesn't suit how weak she is in game. Next, Carlos asks how big is too big, and how do I decide who's worth oathing, and where did I learn French? I'd say Kashino is about where I would draw the line. Even Kashino is a bit big, but her personality makes it more than bearable. As for oathing, it's pretty much just based on vibes. If there's a ship with a design that I really like, but I don't like their voice, I might not oath them. If there are two ships that I like maybe about 70%, and one of them is a random purple that I'll never touch, and the other one is a UR that I'll use everywhere, I'll only oath the UR. Obviously, even for a random purple, if I like them, like 90% or above, I'll oath them. So for example, Liverpool and Devonshire. But if I don't like a UR much at all, I probably won't oath them. And also, I learned French from La France. Next, Twilight Wolf Spirit asks, can you answer what type of feeder ships best improve reload when enhancing a ship? I don't know if this is supposed to be a trick question, but probably destroyers? Okay, this is too many questions from one person. You should probably join a Discord to get real-time help with your questions. I think most communities should have veteran players who can answer all of these questions and more. I'm not an expert on how new and progressing players should be allocating their resources, so I don't want to give you bad advice. Next, Xenia asks, how did you leveling your ships? How can be fast to leveling them? I wouldn't say I'm the fastest in the world at leveling. I just farm whatever event is on if I need to buy things from the shop, otherwise chapters 12 or 13, depending on how badly I need gold. It's probably a good idea to put leveling ships in your Operation Siren mod fleet and exercise fleet too, but I often don't bother. As for the fastest way to level your ships, just feed them rare candies to level 125. You can't get much faster than that. Next, Numbers asks, how are you? Good. And is it normal for my Vanguard to deal the damage of one main ship? Yes, I would say it is normal in a lot of cases. Also, which version of ships do you rate? That's gonna be max everything. Next, Fort Night Kid asks, how do you select Vanguard guns you generally use? That starts by finding the enemy armor type and then choosing what deals the highest DPS to that armor type. Ballistics do affect DPS, but not to a huge extent in most cases. I think I should have covered which guns perform a lot worse than expected due to their ballistics in my guides. And then a second question, what kind of all-out assaults should a Vanguard ship have to consider using a fast gun? You can run calculations to see whether the increase in barrage damage outweighs the loss in gun damage, but more realistically, it's going to come from experience. There are some obvious cases like Shimakaze and Kazagumo, where their barrage to gun damage ratio is so lopsided that it becomes a no-brainer. But for other ships that are more on the border like Scylla and Z52, who don't really have weak main gun mounts, you'll really just have to use them with both regular guns and fast guns to see which performs better. Also, don't forget to take into account barrages that scale off torpedo stat, ignore shields, pierce multiple enemies, or have higher modifiers against heavy. Next, Kai asks, what's your standard on a waifu? Do you pick based on personality or looks? A little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. This is one of those things where I know it if I see it. There isn't really one tangible factor that can determine whether a ship girl would become my favorite or not, aside from having perfect feet. The next question is from Wolf, who asks, who is the best pink-haired girl? And the answer to that is very obviously Bremerton. And that's it for the Q&A. Moving on to the next post. To be honest, I expected a lot more feedback on perhaps certain concepts being explained not clear enough. But I guess people who can sit through a 30-minute video have already been filtered to some extent. Right off the bat, we got someone who didn't watch the guides. When it comes to main fleet equipment, I almost always ignore the DPS column. When DPS is mentioned, this is what pops up in PLZ, so which one you choose has no correlation with their DPS values. When graphed like this, for any equipment that spikes over all others at a certain point in time, there probably exists some scenario where they are the best possible option. Therefore, rather than just looking at DPS, we should instead focus on how much damage each plane deals per strike and what their cooldown is. For Vanguard equipment, their damage uptime is much higher, so their graph much more resembles a smooth line, which means that DPS is a lot more relevant. Unlike main fleet equipment, the DPS values actually paint a pretty accurate picture of relative performance for Vanguard guns. Let's begin with light armor. Next is feedback from Janvin about some of the terms that I often used, like Plymouth gun, for example. I'll likely make a video going over some of the very commonly used nicknames, although it'll only be a list that I come up with off the top of my head, not necessarily covering literally everything, and especially not nicknames that are created by niche subcommunities and used by 3 people who can't speak English properly, if I'm being generous. Next is some feedback from Raideros, who essentially says that more visual aid would be helpful. Obviously, I can't disagree with that. It's just that my workflow is not standardized, so the editing I do is completely spontaneous. Things look different from video and video, and sometimes I just won't be in the mood to spend the time it takes to make the visuals. And they also suggest making shorter videos, but I feel like there are many places where you can get that type of information, and I don't want to do it on my channel. I think instead of doing that, I want to see if I could fit regular live streams into my schedule to answer those types of easy questions in real time. Next, TrueFox says that they're not sure what interception of battleship is referring to. There are ships that ram into your backline and deal a ton of damage, and most battleships will have powerful light cruiser secondaries that will intercept them and take them out. This is the main reason to have at least 1 battleship in your fleet in campaign. And finally, ESZEFVSDF suggests showing off some sample builds. All of my gameplay videos contain sample builds, so just refer to those if you want any ideas. Okay, that's it for this Q&A. Thank you for all the feedback, and see you in the next one.